Now, I was speaking about the browser executing the code immediately at the end of the last lecture. You can control the flow of the code execution with control structures. Control structures basically allow you to tell the browser when to execute certain code or execute certain code more often than once. So really useful tools you have in your toolbox for creating awesome applications. A very common and wide-known control structure is the if statement, which basically allows you to run some code conditionally. So I'll create a new variable and I'll name it condition, and I will set it to true. So this is a Boolean variable here. And then I'll create an if statement by writing if, and then a condition between parentheses here. Now, as you'll later see when I come to operators, you can also compare certain values here. But here I'll just check if condition. And with condition, of course, I'm referring to this variable here. Now, an if statement, which I then create by adding curly braces, expects true or false. These are the only two values with which an if statement can work, because it's checking if this is true, then execute whatever is between these parentheses or these curly braces, excuse me. If this is false, the code between here will not get executed. So if I now log something here, for example, executed, well, I think this is pretty straightforward, but what will we see if I hit run? Well, we see executed because I'm checking if condition is true, and of course condition is true because I'm setting it here. And on the other hand, of course, if I set this to false and I hit run, we see nothing because this code is now not executed. Sometimes we also want to check if something is true, but we want to provide or execute some other code if, well, the condition is not met. We can therefore add the else keyword and then curly braces after it again. So now we execute this code if the condition is true, but if the condition is not true, so if it is false, we'll reach this code here. So what do you think we'll now see if I hit run? Well, we still see executed because it's still set to true. But if I change this to false and hit run again, you now see we get not executed because now we're reaching this else part here. There's also another thing we could specify, else if. Now, why would you specify else if we only can handle true or false? Well, sometimes we want to check multiple conditions for being true. So for example, here we check if condition is true and then we print this code. But if condition is false, we want to check if another condition is true. And if another condition is true, and we check this here, we execute this code, and if this would be false too, then we would log not executed. So now we're first checking if this condition is true, and if this is the case, we will execute this. But if this is not the case, we'll check if at least this condition is true, in which case we would execute this code. And if all of that is not true, well, then we reach the else part here. So what do you think we'll see now? Well, we get still executed because we're not meeting the first condition since this is false, but we do meet the second condition since this is true. Therefore, we get still executed. If I set this to false, we'll get not executed. So we're in the else part then.